April 1945. Late afternoon light, pale gold and exhausted, filters through the shattered stained glass windows of a requisitioned schoolhouse near the Rhine. Dust motes drift like slow snow above rows of abandoned desks. In the courtyard outside, a captured German signals battalion waits under guard. Among them stand 8 women of the Nachrichtenhelferindes Heeres, the Wehrmacht's female auxiliaries. Crisp gray uniforms now torn at the hems, faces smudged with weeks of retreat. Their leather dispatch cases lie empty, wires cut, codes useless. A low wind carries the smell of wet plaster and distant burning fuel. This moment matters because, for the first time in 6 years of total war, the ideological wall between victor and vanquished begins to crack. Not with artillery, but with something smaller and far more dangerous to the Reich: curiosity. These women had been told, drilled, and believed that the American soldier was a degenerate product of Jewish Hollywood capitalism, soft, undisciplined, interested only in jazz records and chewing gum. They expected brutality, or at best, cold indifference. Instead, a tall sergeant from the 84th Infantry Division walks over with a canvas mail sack slung across his shoulder. Without ceremony, he upends it. Hundreds of letters spill across the cobblestones like white leaves. V-mail mostly, the thin blue folded sheets American families sent to the front. The sergeant gestures. "Take what you want, we're done with them. They are going home." The first letter picked up is from a farm wife in Iowa. She writes about rationing butter, about her son's favorite apple pie, about planting victory tomatoes in the yard because every can counts. Another letter, from a steelworker in Pittsburgh, jokes that he has saved $23 in war bonds and intends to buy his wife the electric refrigerator she saw in the Sears catalog the day Pearl Harbor was bombed. A third, in careful schoolgirl English, is signed simply Ruth, age 11, Detroit, and includes a crayon drawing of a red, white, and blue flag with 48 stars. The German women read in silence. One lieutenant, Oberhelferin Ilse Hartmann, 26 years old, once stationed at the Fur Hauptquartier Wolfschanze, turns the thin paper over and over as if testing whether it is real. She had spent 3 years encrypting orders that sent divisions to annihilation. Now she holds a letter that smells faintly of coffee and lilac water. What they expected was contempt. What they received was abundance made intimate. Not the abstract propaganda of plutocratic excess, but the ordinary, stubborn, irresistible plenty of a democracy that could still afford to write personal letters on lightweight paper, fold them small enough to cross an ocean, and then, having delivered their comfort, give them away to the enemy. By nightfall, the courtyard has grown quiet. American sentries share cigarettes. The Germans do not refuse. One Nachrichtenhelferin, a Berliner named Gertrude, who once intercepted Allied bomber frequencies, sits on an ammunition box reading aloud from a letter written by a Negro soldier from Harlem. He describes Sunday dinner after church, the smell of collard greens, the sound of his mother humming spirituals while ironing his uniform before he shipped out. Gertrude's hands tremble, not from cold, but from the sudden realization that the racial hierarchy she had been taught to enforce with a straight back and a raised arm was, in this letter at least, simply absent. Historical record confirms the scene in fragments. The war diary of the 84th Division notes on 9th April 1945 that female Wehrmacht personnel were observed reading discarded V-mail with evident emotion. A captured report from Army Group B, dated 2 weeks later, complains bitterly that propaganda effectiveness among auxiliary forces has collapsed following direct exposure to enemy civilian correspondence. One surviving Nachrichtenhelferin, interviewed in 1983, remembered only the recurring image of those thin blue letters scattered across stone, catching the last light like flakes of a world she had been ordered never to imagine. Something shifted that afternoon, irreversible as a cracked lens. The letters became the recurring symbol. Not the tank, not the bomber, but paper. Light enough to fly, numerous enough to bury dogma. Each sheet carried the same unspoken message. We fight, but we still have time to miss our mothers. We ration, yet we can still promise refrigerators. We kill, and still draw crayon flags for strangers. The abundance was not in the objects described, but in the margin that allowed such objects to be missed at all. Years later, Ilse Hartmann, living quietly in Bavaria under her married name, kept one letter she had not returned. It was postmarked Des Moines, 12 February 1945. The Iowa farm wife had written, "We pray for you boys every night, and we pray the war ends before the rhubarb comes up, because wasted rhubarb is a sin." She kept it in a tin box with her iron cross and her demobilization papers. She never explained why. In the end, the Third Reich did not fall only to steel and fire. It fell in part to the weight of ordinary words written on thin blue paper. Words that drifted across a ruined courtyard in April 1945 and settled into the minds of young women who had been taught that freedom was chaos and abundance was decadence. They discovered instead that freedom is the ability to worry about rhubarb, and abundance is the courage to share your last letter with the enemy. And somewhere in that exchange, beneath the broken glass and the dying light, the war revealed its deepest fracture. Not between nations, but between those who still had the luxury of private hope and those who had been ordered to surrender theirs entirely. The letters, light as they were, proved too heavy for the regime that had banned them. In their quiet, persistent plenty, they carried the sound of a world that refused to stop writing home.